And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white like the light. Good morning. Welcome to a short biblical reflection on the Gospel according to Matthew chapter 17, verses 1 up to 9. It is about the Transfiguration of Jesus, the Gospel reading for the Second Sunday of Lent, year A. Let me read first the text. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and his brother John, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white like light. And behold, appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with him. Then answering Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will make 3 tents here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. While he was still speaking, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud a voice said, This is my Son, the beloved. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him. When the disciples heard this, they fell to the ground and were greatly filled with fear. And Jesus, coming, touched them, saying, Rise up, and do not be afraid. And when they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus himself alone. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus ordered them, Tell no one about the vision until after the Son of Man has raised from the dead. We could make some links, for example, to the book of Exodus, this description that Jesus appeared like the sun, like his clothes were white like light. It could recall the story when Moses was coming down from the mountain after having the vision, when he received the commandments, the vision of God. But also we could talk about the meaning of Moses and Elijah like 2 representatives of the law and the prophets. However, I spoke about those relations in other years, you can see on my channel. Today I would like just to bring up the parallelism, some striking similarity between this description of the Transfiguration and then the resurrection of Jesus in the Gospel according to Matthew. Because the Transfiguration of Jesus in the Gospel according to Matthew is located immediately after first the profession of faith of Saint Peter that Jesus is the Son of God, and then the first announcement of his suffering and death by Jesus himself, and the calling to the address to the disciples to take up own cross. And now we have this transfiguration. And this transfiguration, of course, prepared them for the hard time of his suffering and death. We see this description of Jesus with these elements of light, like his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white like light. And then we have also a bright cloud. In the description of the angel, in the story of the resurrection, there is also this word white as snow, but also is preceding by the expression, his appearance was like lightning. There is also the same verb use, which here it is translated quite faithfully with almost the same meaning. Were greatly filled with fear. This is concerning the reaction of these 3 apostles. And then it is parallel to the description of the guards. For fear of him, the guards shook and became like dead men, like dead people. The description of the disciples is not so negative because has no this negative element added, this component. However, concerning the guards, they became like dead people. And then Jesus is using almost the same expression, addressing first to the disciples, do not be afraid. And then later we have the same expression with even more direct, because there is this emphatic you do not be afraid. Those words are addressed by the angel to the woman who came to the tomb. And then also the word fear is used in the positive description in verse 8, that the woman left the tomb quickly with fear and great joy. There is also the same verb, which now in verse 7 of the Transfiguration, I adjusted a little bit, translated it more literally, raise up, and then it's followed by the second imperative, do not be afraid, because this raise up refers also to the description of the expression that Jesus is using also about himself, has been raised from the dead. It is the expression concerning Jesus himself. And then this same verb is used also twice in the description of the resurrection. Firstly, the angel says just generally, he is not here, for he has been raised, without the complement. And then in verse 7, he has been raised from the dead. So therefore, seeing that parallelism, we could even just state that not only those three disciples had the vision of seeing the Jesus transfigured, but also additionally, Jesus, as in verse 7 of the story of Transfiguration, Jesus coming, touched them, saying, raise up and do not be afraid. Jesus is coming to them in order to touch them, and then is making this statement, raise up and do not be afraid. It is not just simply to stand up, but it is also, we could read it in spiritual way, like raising up from being dead spiritually, in order now being raised up spiritually, they will be able to recognize the resurrection of Jesus, but firstly to go through this hard time of his suffering and death. I would like to wish you a nice day and nice reflection on this gospel reading.